What's up, everybody? Chris coming to you from Salty Island, and GW has just released their article on how to build a list for boarding actions with the upcoming Arks of Omen, and honestly, it's somehow even better than I hoped for. So this morning, I checked online, and it looks like GW has finally showed off how to build a list in the upcoming boarding actions for Arks of Omen. And this is actually pretty fantastic. They have a preview for the competitive side of 40k, which they completely overhaul the army list building, making it so that rather than requiring a preset number of troops, you just have a preset number of whatever faction you or whatever slot you want. So elites, heavy, fast, or troops. And then there are optionals on top of that. And I was expecting that Arks of Omen would have something similar, like you had to have one troop, or you had to have one elite, or you had to have, one troop, one HQ, one elite, one HQ, something like that. And actually, it is somehow even better. So let's get to the good part right here. Boarding actions require 0 to 1 HQ. You don't even need the HQ, which is actually kind of like amazing. HQs are still great. They provide aura buffs. They provide a lot of synergy. We're going to get into things like relics and warlord traits a little bit later in this video, but just know that you don't need an HQ. You also don't need troops. 0 to 3 troops and 0 to 3 elite, meaning that you can take a force of all Terminators, which is super thematic. You can take a force of all Gene Stealers, also super thematic. You can take troops. You can take whatever mix match of what you want. Just know that there are lots of exceptions for every army, and we're going to touch on some of those exceptions. So you Gene Stealer cult players, don't be freaking out that you can't take all your fancy HQs, or Sisters players. Don't worry, Gene Stealers and Sisters players, GW's got you covered. They understand how your army works. Let's look at a couple of the other restrictions. Up here at the top, you cannot take vehicles, monsters, bikes, and cavalry, as well as anything with jump pack and most things that fly. So, makes sense. You are in a very tight, confined space, so can't drive a tank through it. No monstrous creatures. Bikes aren't driving through it. No one's riding a horse in space. And you can't really use a jump pack to fly when you've got a ceiling directly over your head. The other one is you can only take a single character. This includes things outside of the HQ. So, for example, the Apothecary of the Space Marines, which fills an elite slot, that counts as your one character, so you wouldn't be able to take an HQ also. Again, before certain armies start freaking out, just know that GW has taken this into consideration, and some armies, Sisters of Battle, for example, and Gene Stealer Cult, have exceptions to this rule, and we'll get into those things. So, troops and elites. Now, there are also some armies that kind of either rely heavily on a specific unit, or very thematically should have a specific unit in this type of scenario. The perfect one down here that GW replies to is Tau Crisis Suits. As long as you promise not to fly, you can take Crisis Battle Suits. There's some other ones like Hellblasters and Eradicators. Even if you're a heavy slot, you're allowed to take a limited number of Hellblasters and Eradicators. And rather than making a big fuss about trying to break it down inside this article, GW has this button right here that lets you download the entire list of the exceptions and changes for each army book using in the boarding patrol detachments. This is awesome because GW is actually giving you all of these for free. You can just check these out. And even if you don't buy the rules and you want to try out the upcoming boarding action patrols, these rules are now free. You don't even need to buy the book if you just want to play the game. Maybe you might want to buy the book for the scenarios, or one of the people in your gaming group might want to buy the book for the scenarios, or you can all chip in, whatever. But each person doesn't have to buy them. You just need to hit this download button. I can't believe that GW actually did this. This is kind of ridiculous. I'm a little bit in shock, but I'm here for it. Now, the article kind of goes into some sample armies. It's pretty much what you expect. I'm not really gonna like review each of these. This is kind of all your own personal flavor. But there are a couple of interesting things that when I clicked on this downloads, I went ahead and read through each of the factions to see what the additional rules imply. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that people can probably read this stuff. But there are a couple of interesting rules that seem to heavily imply other rules, and I actually kind of want to go over that first. The first one is referenced in the Eldar rules as well as the Tyranids and the Gene Stealer cult. There is a reference to squad sizing. The big one is it comes right here with the Storm Guardians. The big one being is that, yeah, you can take the platform, the heavy weapon platform. No shock there. But this would mean that the unit has a starting strength of 11. So this kind of seems to imply that this is a thing. Like, this is an exception to a rule here about the starting strength of 11. Maybe you cannot start with a unit larger than 10. That seems to be kind of an implied rule in a couple other places as well. The second part is the second half here. When forming boarding squads for such a unit, split it into one unit containing 6 models and another containing 5. This is not the only reference to splitting a squad up into smaller sized squads, kind of like Space Marines, how they have combat squads with a 10-man squad. This seems to imply that you either can or must combat squad these Guardian or Defender squads that have the heavy weapon platform, in which case you take a unit of 6 and a unit of 5. This rule is also referenced in both the Tyranid and the Gene Stealer cult. I'm just going to scroll down real quick to Tyranids because it's easy to get to. It's the last one. Right here, when forming boarding squads, do not split Termagants or Hormagants into separate units. Again, implying that you maybe need to split these units into smaller squads should you take a unit of 10, but the Termagants and Hormagants do not, so you get a big blob, kind of a thematic thing where so swarm. The other interesting one is in the Thousand Sons. It does specifically reference that if you split this squad, the half that does not contain the sorcerer or the Terminator sorcerer loses Psyker and loses the Sorceress Master ability. This is important for things like the Warp Charge ability. That's the Thousand Sun Army specific ability. So this seems to imply that it is a must rather than a may type of an effect. I suspect that there is probably a restriction on taking a unit size bigger than 10. And that when you take 10, you split them up into smaller squads, combat squad style. Again, this isn't explicitly listed yet, but it's kind of something I've interpreted from having read through all these rules. The other interesting one, since I'm here in the Thousand Sons, is that the Thousand Sons cannot take the cult ability, the cult command abilities. Here we go. You cannot upgrade any models in your army to have Legion command upgrades. For those who don't know, the Legion command is might just be the name. I don't know if this is what the Thousand Sons specifically call it, but all factions have those extra abilities that you can use to upgrade a character or a unit. That's like the Space Marines upgrading a captain to a chapter master, or the Necrons. I believe the Cryptechs all get a special Cryptech type that you can pay extra points and get that additional upgrade. I think all the armies have something like this. Orcs have like custom jobs. The Thousand Sons specifically cannot take any of those upgrades. For you Thousand Sun players, that's 100%. The Terminator unit cannot have the Rites of Coalescence. That's the one that auto heals the Terminators. I know you were going to do it. I was going to do it. All Thousand Sun players were going to do it. You can't do it. Thousand Sons are the only ones, however, who have this reference that you cannot take this. I am assuming this implies that everyone else can still take their army-specific things. So you can get like the Burner Boys can take like the ones that love extra fire. Space Marines, you can get a chapter master or the upgraded chaplain, whatever it might be for your army. Seems to imply that you guys can all take them, except for Thousand Suns. There are quite a few sorcerer's powers, and Thousand Suns aren't the only one. But again, since I'm here, something that you might want to check out if you use a Psyker is the warp charge on a lot of these have changed. Particularly if you have a psychic power that seems to have a movement ability. Temporal Surge, both for Chaos and Thousand Suns. The jump for Orcs, for example, is also changed. I'll just let you know, the jump is now Warp Charge 11. It's pretty hard. Sorcerer's Facade is also 11. So if you are a Psyker type army, go ahead and take a look. Some of your psychic power target numbers might have changed. And the last one, and this one is actually not listed anywhere in these rules, but I do want to go ahead and talk about relics and warlord traits. Now, so far, nothing in the article or this PDF that you can download references relics and warlord traits. However, I am a little curious because, one, there's a couple of relics that are particularly powerful, but also in, I believe, the current version of Match Play, you do not start with a relic or a warlord trait for free any longer. You need to use your army's stratagem that enables you to purchase a relic and a warlord trait. But GW has also stated that all the stratagems in your core book have now been tossed out the window for these boarding actions, and they're going to give you, in the upcoming Angron book, which is the second book. My mistake on that in a previous video, I thought it was a third. It's actually the second book. You'll be getting all new stratagems. With that said, I am not sure if you start this game with a relic or a warlord trait, particularly because you don't need to take an HQ. So I don't know if maybe for just balance purpose, it's not, again, you don't have one for free, which is kind of what I'm going to make the assumption at this current time, because the core rules of the match play have changed to not give them for free. I'm going to assume that you can pay the command point to buy a relic and buy a warlord trait as is optional. And if you don't buy it, then you just get the command points back, and you're fine with that. And I'm going to also make the assumption that you start with 3. I'm going to assume that's 3. It's combat patrol. We'll see. That, again, I'm making some assumptions, but since we do have these list buildings here and the framework for building a list, and I'm going to start playing around with building some lists myself with the house armies that we have. These are some things that you might want to think about where, you might, if you don't get that relic and that warlord trait for free, you might simply opt not to take an HQ. You might change your army choices. But then again, some armies have particularly good, like an Orc boss or an Eldar Autarch. Right? You might want that blender. And so, or even a Space Marine captain or chaplain might provide you those buffs. Those things might be worth it to you. Again, I think it's really cool because you don't have to take these things. And it's part of it's now part of the thought process. Is it worth it? What's worth it? And again, you only get one character. So if you want the apothecary, for example, like maybe you don't take the HQ because you rather have the healing of the apothecary. Again, lots of new and interesting thought processes and choices to make, which is why I really love this sort of a thing. So I'm really excited for that. If you stuck around this long, I just want to go ahead and go through some of the notes on mustering these boarding action changes, like touch on some of the highlights for each of these factions. I don't play all of them. We do have majority of them. I'm not going to read them verbatim. It's a free PDF. Go ahead and just download it, and you can go ahead and check out your armies yourself. But a couple of key ones that I want to go ahead and highlight here. First one being Sisters. You players, like I told you, you can get 3 character models, but only one of them can have a wound characteristic of 5 or more. This is a rule that's going to be repeated a couple of times in a couple of armies, but just know you can have more than one character. You can get Ephrael Stern and Kygnil. However, even if both of them have a wound characteristic of 5 or more, still counts. They're a pair. They're going to come together. Sisters Repentia, you can have a unit size of either 4 or 9. It's pretty specific that you can have 4 or 9, so I'm assuming that it's not 5 or 7. Also, I believe Sisters Repentia is not an elite choice. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one down in the comments. Arcoflagellants, 3, 5, or 10. Again, I believe this is not an elite. I believe Arcoflagellants is a fast attack. Or maybe it's a heavy. Not sure. Might be an elite, actually. But specifically, you get 3, 5, or 10. Quite a few units have wording like this. You can include 1 fast slot only if it is a Dominion squad. So, again, for you people who are just like, man, there's my favorite unit is not included in there, but thematically should be allowed to be there. GW's clearly thought of that. Dominion squads are allowed. You cannot take the Triumph of St. Catherine, even though I believe it actually does fulfill all of the requirements of being a infantry and not any of the other things. Not a vehicle, it's not a bike. But no, you can't take Triumph. Calm yourselves, people. There are specific restrictions on abilities that might be game-breakingly powerful. For example, Sisters, you cannot take the Rapturous Blows Blessing of the Faithful. And lastly here, like I said, when forming boarding squads, if a Repentia unit has a size of 9, you specifically split it up into 4 and 5 models. So, again, kind of implying that you can combat squad, essentially, all different armies. No additional rules on the Sisters. Custodes, pretty much, all of these must be from the same order, so you can't mix and match your sub-factions, whether it be Order or Shield Host or whatever like that. You can take a single Witch Seeker unit. Custodian Wardens, 3 or 6, pretty specific. Alaris Custodians, you can have 1, 2, or 3, does specify it. And that you can also choose to split the Alaris Custodians into multiple 1 model units. So they can just go off and do their own thing. Very thematic for Custodes. Only add a Knight Centura model if your boarding detachment includes at least 1 other Anthema Psychana unit. So you'll see this in a couple of other ones too, where taking a certain unit will unlock the ability to take a specific thing that previously wasn't available. And it does say right here, you cannot upgrade a model to have Unstoppable Destroyer Captain Commander ability. So this one is specific. Just this one you can't take. Let's see here. Oh, some little adjustments to their Psyker rules. Right. Only if they're visible. Auras, they've already stated, don't go through walls. And Trajan Valoris cannot get enhancements. All right, here we go. Admech. 1 Cataphron Breachers, 1 and no more than 1 unit of Breachers, and 1 and no more than 1 unit of Destroyers. This is great because I believe the Breachers are actually not allowed normally because I think they're bike. But you can get Breachers. I'm super happy for that one. You cannot get the Castellans. You can't do the Castellans still. Very sad about that, but at least I do get the Breachers back. No Datasmith. No Datasmith though. They are specific, where you get the Imperatives only if the Warlord is a Skitarii Marshal, and you get the Canticles only if the Warlord is a Tech Priest. Can't get them both, because there's only 1 Warlord. This implies that the Warlord is still a thing, though. So, again, you can probably get Warlord traits. I am currently making the assumption that you got to pay the command points for them. But we'll see. That's not set in stone. Don't quote me on that one. They also make some adjustments to certain people's abilities, like the Shroud Protocol. You just get it if it's 6 inches away, rather than the 12, because 12 is really long in a boarding action type game. If you've seen samples of the tables, it's going to be pretty close. So it's adjusted to 6 inches. Make the assumption if you have something similar to this, where you get cover if you're more than 12 inches away, just assume that it now says 6. Agents of the Imperium is a thing. Now, I'm not super familiar with Inquisitor warbands and the Assassins, but you can play them now as their own faction. It's very cool. Go ahead and check it out. I'm not going to read them all because I don't know what I'd be talking about. Astra Militarum. I believe these are assuming that you are using the new Astra Militarum rules, not the old one. But you can get 3 characters. You can attach things to a command squad. You can only attach 1, not all of them. Pick 1. Let's see. You don't combat squad if you attach it past 5. Let's see. So there's a few other things. Psychic Maelstrom, for example, adjusted the warp charge. Models with aerial drop ability lose that ability. Can't drop into a spaceship. Can't drop through the walls. Doesn't work that way. Eldar and Yunari. You can get 1 Dark Reaper unit. I'm stoked for this because this makes our House Uthwe army now legal. Like I said, we already talked about the Storm Guardians and the weapon platforms. Warlocks. So here we go. Here's an interesting one on the Warlocks. The rule requiring such a unit to be taken at its minimum size does not apply. So I'm not sure what rule this is referencing. I didn't really want to include this earlier because I'm not really sure what's going on with it, but it does seem to imply that there is some type of a rule that requires a minimum size unit or taking it at a minimum size. I don't know if this is all things because, for example, Thousand Suns, the minimum size is 5 rubrics. So I don't know why you would combat squad more than if you couldn't take the unit past 5, why they would imply a rule about combat squatting the 5 rubrics. That's why I didn't really reference this in my implied rules earlier in this video, but it's a thing. It's a wording here. It seems to imply some things. We'll see where this goes. Just know that Warlocks don't have this. You can take between 1 and 5. You can only get 1 Exarch. Just 1 Exarch. That's fine. No Harlequins. So Yunari cannot take the Harlequins. Basically, Harlequins are their own sub-faction here in this one. So just know that Harlequins are apparently narratively fighting on their own, not on behalf of the Yunari. I guess the Harlequins all just collectively agree that Abaddon's being a bit too much of a dick. It does make a note that the Phoenix Lords cannot perform the secure site action. So we already know that actions will be a thing. But Phoenix Lords can't do their specifically theirs. Models cannot make battle focus moves. Like I've already mentioned, anything that lets you move more is at a premium here in Arks of Omen. So movement and positioning and line of sight is all going to be a really huge part of the game. Like we talked about in the previous videos, your own friendly units now block your line of sight. So any kind of movement tricks definitely now comes at a premium. Demons, you can get 1 unit of Flesh Hounds. It's very cool. Flamers, you can do it even though they fly. The Exalted Flamer, no enhancements. Don't split the Blue Horrors. So you can't go down to Brimstone. Just don't bother. With that said, it does reference that when you split pink into blue, the blues don't form their own unit. Blues is just part of the pink horror unit. Still makes them ridiculously tough, but also makes sense why blues don't go down to Brimstones, because that'd just be ridiculous. Horror model splitting can increase the size of the model's boarding squad above its starting size. There you go. It's pretty obvious. Lots of warp charge changes. Infernal Gateway is 10, like I said. Premium. Chaos Space Marines. You can get Spawn. Thousand Suns and Death Guard units. Just know that you can also get the Spawn. You can get 2 HQs, but one of them has to be the Dark Commune. This is, again, pretty common that you'll see amongst a few other armies. Cultists. Nope. No more cultists than twice. Let's see. You can include more cultist units than Traitor Astartes, but no more than twice as many. There you go. 2 cultists, 1 Astartes. Only 1 gets the Balefire Tome. Be a little ridiculous otherwise. If you include the possessed unit, can only have 5 models. Additional models cannot be added to it. This one here implies that models can be taken past the initial starting value, considering that it's very specific that, these ones cannot. So again, we'll see how the unit size restriction works, but just know that there's going to be something somewhere coming down in probably a future preview. Don't split cultist mobs. Yeah, that makes sense. Accursed cultists must form boarding squads. When they do, split all the mutants that are in one unit and all the torments that are in the other. So this one's kind of specific to this unit because it's kind of a mixed squad. When you split them by the type. All right. Oh, actuate up here. Let's see. Master the Duplicity Legion trait, right? Yeah, there you go. See? 6 inches away. It's for you Alpha Legion players. Death Guard. Kind of getting into some repetition now. You get a spawn. You can have 2 characters, but one of them's got to be the Fetid Virion. Cultists and Poxwalkers. Not more than Plague Marines. Don't split Cultists and Poxwalkers. Yada, yada, yada. Oh, fun thing with the spawn. You automatically get Toughness 6 and Disgusting Resilient. That's cool. Dark Eldar. Pretty much what you would expect if you're a Dark Eldar player. Got to be from the same cult, same cabal, same coven. You get 1 fast attack, Clawed Fiends. You can have a Court of the Archon, but they are very specific on what you take in said Court of the Archon. Oh, my mistake. You also cannot have models upgraded with the Lords of Cormorra upgrade. And no Agile Hunter's Cult Obsession. Yep. Here we go. You do get a specific thing, acknowledging your raiding party kind of like theme. You get 1 warrior, 1 witch, 1 rack. Then you all get blades for hire. Assuming this is going to be a thing. I don't play Dark Eldar, but they acknowledge it. You can do your thing. A few other restrictions. Beast cannot perform the operate hatchway action. Beasts don't get to open doors. Yeah, whatever. Gene Stealer Cult, you get 3 characters, only one of which is 5 or more. You cannot use Brood Brothers, so just Gene Stealer Cult. Don't split your neophytes. They do reference your ambush rule, so that is changed. Basically, the way it works is your opponent sets up their entire boarding patrol, then you do, rather than the alternating. You lose the conceal rule. Some other minor changes, usual stuff at this point. What do we got? Grey Knights. Yeah, you get interceptors out of fast attack. Let's see. You can take a servitors unit, but you gotta have a tech marine. Makes sense. Models with the Inceptor squad have a move characteristic of 6. Personal teleporters. They do change how that works. You make a normal move. You can move through models, but you cannot move through walls. So the walls are probably too tight. You can't risk teleporting into another wall. There's a wall behind a wall. So basically you gotta move where you can see. Not through walls. Can move through units though. Which again, considering that friendlies do also block, still useful. Oh, Gate of Infinity, 11, right? Movement tricks are premium. Harlequin. So Harlequins are kind of interesting. If you do not take the Solitaire, you can have 2 HQs. If you take the Solitaire, he's your only HQ. Only one gets pivotal role. And Solitaires cannot take enhancements or have pivotal role. There's some other clarifications things here. Death Jester has their thing when they kill stuff. They have an effect. If that unit is set to defender has set to Overwatch, it's no longer in either of those states. This is interesting. Set Overwatch. Considering that Overwatch is no longer a stratagem, I am going to assume that Overwatch is now a mechanic again, which I'm really hoping that that's the way it's just going to go in upcoming edition. Leagues of Voltan, I actually have not played or played against Leagues of Voltan at this time, but you get one heavy support slot of Thunderkin, and you cannot do the upgrade of the Iron Master to the Forge Master. I'm assuming that's kind of like the Chapter Master upgrade from the Captain, but you can't do it. Necrons, 2 characters, one of them's got to be a Cryptek, not counting the name people. Crypteks, you can add a Cryptek even though they can fly. It specifies right here. You get Scarab Swarms, even though they can fly. Before you get all really excited, it's right here. If you have the fly keyword, you basically lose it while you're on the battlefield. So you can take the unit that can fly, they just can't fly. They gotta agree to walk like the rest of us. Orcs can have 2 characters. One of them's gonna be the Runt Herd. Obviously, you need a Runt Herd to herd your runts. But you can only get 1 Gretchen unit. Don't split them up. You do get Flash Kits. You don't get Ludas. I'm kind of sad. You can include 2 units of Mega Knobs, not 3. Only 1 model gets to have a custom job. Fair enough. There's a few specific rule notes here. Well, for Commandos, the Lucky Blue Gits culture. A few other things. Go ahead and read it. The jump is 11. Space Marines. You can bring the Primarch. It's very specific. As far as I can tell, you're the only one who can bring a Lord of War. So Gulliman and or the potential upcoming Lion? Question mark? But you can. You're the only one. A little ridiculous. 1 fast attack. Assault Squad. So if you're Space Wolves, Fenrisian Wolves. You can take 1 heavy, Hellblaster, or Eradicator. If you take the Hellblaster, 5 bottles, no more. Can add company veterans if you have the Captain. Servitors if you have the Tech Marine. The Combat Squad rules do not apply. Instead, units split by forming boarding squads. Again, here's the reference to boarding squads. I'm assuming we're going to get some future update about this, but there's the reference again. Tau, like I said, you get your battle suits, so there you go. You get 1 stealth battle suit, Farsight or Crisis, even though they have fly. Again, you lose the fly. You lose fly. Just gotta walk 6 like the rest of us. You can play Kroot. Martin, if you're watching this, it's for you. You can play Kroot right here. You got no excuse. So you should be coming over and playing a game with us here at Salty Island. That's how you build your Kroot army. Do it. Do it. Shout out to Martin. Making a Kroot army. Get your Kroot picking arm ready. We're playing a game. 1,000 Suns. Yeah, you get a spawn. You get same thing with your cultists. You don't get your fancy upgrades. Lots of psychic power changes. Make sure you check it out. Tyranids. Big sad. We have a Tyranid army in the house, but if you've seen the battle report, there's a lot of monsters in it. So we're going to be needing to update that. Only 1 Lictor, though. So not everything is a Lictor for once. Do get Ripper Swarms. And that is the rough summary. So go ahead and download it if you want to check out the nitty-gritty details for your specific army. Go ahead and start building some armies and post down in the comments below what you'll be taking for your combat armies. 500 points, boarding patrol. You don't even need to take an HQ. So Eldar Iyanden players, Deathwing players, you guys have no excuse. You can play your all elite choices. You don't even need to have a character HQ. You just take whatever. Just take whatever you want. It's amazing. I'm super here for GW just opening it up and letting people play whatever they want to play. This is a narrative play. It seems like they're trying to keep it roughly balanced, but at the same time, they're adjusting things rather than just wholesale removing them. And the few things that they have removed, aka Rites of Coalescence for 1,000 Suns, you know what, I understand. So you guys let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. Like I said, post the list that you're looking to play. for your boarding actions. I really want to see what everyone's got going on. Thank you for checking us out, and we'll see you guys in the next video when the next update comes along. I'm super hyped for this. I hope you are too. Thanks, everyone. Peace out.